Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and very good morning to all viewers. My name is Afzan Mahadi, Head of Coaching Expertise, Akademi Kejurulatihan Kebangsaan National Sports Institute of Malaysia. Today, I would like to say thanks to everybody. Continue watching, continue discussing, continue with us at the AKK webinar. So now actually we are at the 4th series of talk and share with AKK webinar. All right, I would like to say thank you to the fellows from ICCE Global, from the viewers from ISN, MSN, Majlis Sukan Negeri, coaches, parents, and students. All right, today we are going to discuss about long-term athletes development challenges for coaches, scientists, and administrators. With us today, I'm as speaker and moderator for today's session, and with us is a keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Oleksandr Krasilshchikov. But I'm going to give a 1 or 2 slides of presentation on the long-term athletes development first. All right, we go for our first program. All right, our session will discuss about the key point on the practical application for long-term athletes development, key factors that affect long-term athletes development, and challenges for coaches, scientists, and administrators in Malaysia and in the global view. All right, on what's actually long-term athletes development? Long-term athletes development, actually a model, is a framework for an optimal training, competition, and recovery schedules for each stage of athletics development. Coaches who are engaged in the model and its practices are more likely to produce athletes who reach their full athletics potential. So when we talk about long-term athletes development, we actually referring our program with enjoyment, fun, creative, and coaches must have different type of variation during the training regime. And of course, when we touch on the long-term athletes development, we think about how to make young athletes, such as young athletes, to stay long with whatever training session that they have. So in order for us to allow this situation happen, we need to know the basic element on the long-term athletes development. For example, every training regime, they must have like organization program on the a global view on the training and so on. We must touch on the fitness and health, and we must touch on the games and sports. So every long-term athletes development program, back to the early statement that I made, must be fun, enjoy, and coaches actually need to be creative and develop variation of the training regime. Okay, what's the comparison between early specialization and multilateral development? Early specialization effect with the quick performance improvement, all right? And the long-term athletes development, which is on the multilateral development, involves slower performance improvement, all right? For the early specialization, best performance will be achieved around 15 to 16 years old because of the quick adaptation. So if you start early age, there has a longevity of the training session, saying that six years to 8 years. But when you start early, normally you will end early. All right. The best performance for the multilateral or long-term athletes development should be in between 18 and above. and the age of physiological and psychological maturity on the maturation. Of course, when we're talking about the performance in consistency of the performance in competition for the early specialization, because they are still in the in a motor development on the specific sensitive period. And for the long-term athletes development, consistency of performance in competition, because they're more stable, they are more mature in terms of the development of their own body structure and so on. So by age of 18, athletes will burn out if you start early. Normally, by 18, athletes will burn out. But for the long-term athletes development, longer athletics life. So might be, you can say more when you started at age of 12, or saying that 12, you might continue your training journey until your age of 29, 30, 26. Normally they're stopped in a highly competition. So the early specialization prone to injury because of the forced adaptation. Why I mentioned about the prone to injury because of forced adaptation? Because at early age, when you push them too hard, sometimes the muscle actually is not really developed into their body as an athlete. So sometimes when coach focusing in a certain level of competition and preparing athletes only within 6 months, so the body cannot, the physiological body cannot tolerate with this type of forced adaptation. And the last one on the multilateral development or the long-term athletes development, there is few and injury will be occur. Why? Back to the preparation on the foundation on the body development of certain level of athletes. So I'm going to go to my last slide before I pass over to Dr. Olex. All right, there is a 10 key factor that affect long athletes development. Number one is a fundamental. Fundamental is all about learning basic movement, and a sports skill should be made fun. As I mentioned to you during the first slide regarding the fun element, we should continue all sports begin with a basic fundamental movement and the core sports skill. All right. So the element like the ABC of athletics. All sports begin with a best, such as includes agility, balance, coordination, and speed, while fundamental movement skill includes just running, jumping, skating, and throwing. So when you start with a long-term athletes development, when we are talking about we are thinking about the athletes who are in a very young age. So we actually can expose young kids to explore the space and so on. Okay, we go for the next key factor on the specialization. The specialization, well-rounded as a multi-sports athletes have the highest potential to achieve. So sports are classified as either early or late specialization sports. So an example of an early specialization sports is like rhythmic gymnastic, gymnastic, artistic gymnastic, diving, something such as like that sports, and were due to growth, girls are potentially retiring from their sport at age 14, 15, or 16 years of age. So then other sport like contact sports are classified as a late specialization in sports such as hockey, soccer, football, netball, tennis, track and field, and a few sports players don't reach their full potential until after full growth of maturity. So specialization at an early age limits actually limits children from acquiring a broad spectrum of the athlete's movements and skill that may limit or put a cap on the overall athletics potential. So many citation actually believe that young athletes who are participate in a variety of sport have fewer injuries and play sports longer than those who are specialized before puberty. So as I highlighted before, that from Brenner 2007 did mention about well-rounded multi-sports athletes have the highest potential to achieve. So it's more or less like sports sampling for the early age. All right, we go for the number 3 is on the trainability. Missing optimum opportunities significantly affect a child's ability to reach his or her full potential. There are identifiable stages during a child's physical and psychological development that offer optimum opportunities to develop particular attributes such as basic movement skill, like agility, balance, coordination, and speed. So basic sports skill like running, jumping, throwing, skating, and striking, and other than physical capacities like flexibility, endurance, and strength. So missing these optimum opportunities has been shown to significantly affect a children's ability to reach his or her full potential. In our current system, training in early age focuses on the outcomes of winning rather than developmental process of the optimal training. So that is for the trainability. All right, we go for the another point of the 10 years rule. On the 10 years rule, refer to the 10 years rule, 10,000 hours rule relating to the needs of practice for 3 hours a day for 10 years to become proficient. But to discuss more further on the 10 years rules, Dr. Olex, we are going to elaborate on their keynote elements on the 10-year rules. Relating on the 10,000 hours rules too. All right, we go for the next one in the physical, mental, cognitive, emotional development. Focusing while remaining calm and confident is an essential skill to long-term performance. So the training program should include key mental components identified by sports psychologists like concentrations, confidence, motivation, and handling pressure. During the long-term athletes development, by end of their journey, before they're entering the phase of competition in a highly elite program, the what we call winning mentality should be inculcated into their mind, so that every athlete who are actually ready for the competition, like a SEA Games, ASEAN Games, Commonwealth, Olympic, also the World Cup, can actually easily to say that adapt with the situation, then the set their mind on the winning mentality. Okay. And the sixth one is biological age versus chronological age. Is depending on the chronological age is a poor guide to segregate adolescent for competition. So biological age should be considered through our development and identification process. As an example, one only need look at the numbers of early months birth dates and make up our under 17 and under 18 national team. Our current system forces players into complete to win. so it's depending to the stakeholder or whoever organization who actually handling on the a competition, such as MSSM, MSSD, and so on. What's actually happened in Malaysia's situation. All right, we go for the point number 7 on the periodization and training principle. On the periodization and training principle, everybody knows that there is an element, that block system that should be referred with. Periodization is not about plotting the element on the training regime, but you must consider on the growth and maturity of the athletes, and also the what we call a target of the athletes for the high performance or non-high performance relates to the competition level. Do they have a 3-star competition level, 2-star competition level, or 1-star competition level on that matter? All right, the system alignment and integration. This is, we need to structure that athlete-centered and look at the individual players' development. So the framework for long-term athletes development actually is not only dealing with a group of athletes, but you are dealing with the one-by-one athlete's performance relates to the athlete's development. And the point number 9 is a calendar planning for competition. There is a need to be better systems for how to best use our kids' time on and off the court or the field. So not to say that you have only 2 players, so you have 11 competition during a year, then you might use only 2 players during a year. You need to substitute the players with the elite players and the development players too. And the last one is a continuous improvement. When we mentioning about continuous improvement, we mentioning about fitness, we mentioning about health of the athletes or participants who are under us. So the long-term athletes development principle, on whichever strategies is built, address core needs for the all players. So the continuous improvement is a key underlying principle for long-term athletes development. Okay, I'm not going to continue my point on the 10 key factors that affect long-term athletes development, but I'm going to present pass over to Dr. Olex. Before we pass over to Dr. Olex, a little bit about Dr. Olex. All right. Okay, Dr. Olex, do you hear me?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning, Elton. Good morning, everyone.
Olex. Okay, I would like to introduce to all viewers that from our local and global viewers, our keynote speaker for today session, long-term athletes development challenges for coaches, scientists, and administrators, Professor Dr. Oleksandr Krasilshchikov. I'm the only one who can spell your name. Oleksandr Krasilshchikov from School of Health Science, Universiti Sains Malaysia. He's actually school kid in swimming, cadet kayaker for Ukraine, and he's actually from Ukraine, staying at Malaysia. He's sports science from year 2 of the degree program, USSR, Best Student Research in Sports Science at 1979. Congratulations, Doctor. PhD at age of 24 years old as a site professor at age 33 in Ukraine. And a career in Ukraine more to academic and applied sports science. And he was at the India before on the training method experts, sports science coordinator, and for the national team for 10 sports. And coming to Malaysia, coming out onto the Malaysia on the year 2002 at Universiti Sains Malaysia, Kupang Korea. And in relation with that, he's actually our former ex-advisor for TID and talent development in Malaysia. His passion for research absolutely been admired during towards a betterment of the sports ecosystem. So now I will pass over this valuable session to our Professor, Dr. Oleksandr Krasilshchikov, and I authorize this session special for you, Dr. Olex. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Afzan. Much appreciated, and thank you for all those good words which has been now said about me. And thank you for giving me that opportunity to speak in front of such a renowned gathering. And thank you also for making my job easier due to your very deep and professional introduction, where you were actually covering the issues of long-term athlete development, early specialization, late specialization, and actually the issues of those two. And I'm glad that I have that opportunity again. Thank you for inviting me to share some thoughts and some experience and some research on those issues of long-term athlete development. Because see, I'm one more reason for me to be happy that you introduced the whole thing as a professional, being an athlete, being a scientist, and administrator in one face and in one body, which is a rare case scenario actually, and not only for Malaysia but rather for the whole world. That, and having said that, that actually gets you a better overview of the situation. And as you have mentioned, there are key factors, there are setups. I call those like models, and I will share those available in the world today. However, there is always an issue with the theory, or any theory for that matter. That, you know, theories, particularly in physics or in math, are quite often developed around things which do not exist. So there could be theories predicting the presence of a planet. There can be a theory predicting some, you know, particles which we don't know yet. Of course, the sports science theories are different, and the long-term development programs models are different from those. However, I have to admit, again, from the point of view of a practitioner, that not many theories are actually working practically. So practicality issues of some theories are really serious. And that is another reason why the title which we were discussing for today's presentation with Afzan is actually challenges for athletes, coaches, scientists, and administrators rather. Because a good theory is something which is applicable. I'm not saying bad good theories, but I will show you some examples whereby the theoretical concept has a completely different look when you try applying it. So if you cannot apply the theory and make it practical and kind of get it into practicality, then you ask yourself a question. Okay, it's a good theory. Is it practical? Is it applicable? So I will show you a few issues today which are actually trying to link those issues, like, okay, you do have a theory. Is it practical? If it is, good. If it is not, what do we do? How do we work about it? How do we incorporate it? Because quite often we are also facing a situation when we cannot take a theory, like, on it, and it delivers. No, it doesn't work that way. We have to adapt that theory to our reality. We have to see what are the resources we have, what are the cadre we have, what are the people we're working with. Then only we can say, yeah, okay, that is a realistic theory. Or even if it is not, we can still make it work. So with having said that, I will request, yes, you guys to pay attention to the screen. I will be starting the presentation right now, and it will take about an hour. So, however, let me know if you're bored, and then we will try to adjust it one way or another. So, what is it all about today? Long-term athlete development, challenges for coaches, scientists, and administrators. I'll be presenting it from the, of course, like Afzan was saying, I had kind of luxury or I was blessed to work with elite athletes and sports scientists in at least like 4 countries, one of which does not exist anymore, unfortunately. That is Soviet Union. The next one is Ukraine, which used to be a part of Soviet Union where I was born. And then I worked quite for a while in India, as Afzan was mentioning, and eventually Malaysia. So the experience of elite athletes and long-term development models from 4 countries. Let's have a look. How does it work? So long-term development models, and I put here in square brackets talent because it's always about kind of talent development. Although we do have sports for all, but eventually at some point we're narrowing the search. We are picking the talented athletes, and we kind of focus on them for the benefit of the country. Then, of course, those models are evolutionizing, and there are kind of different types of models. And what I typically say that is, okay, we used to concentrate on the models of sports science, which are right in the middle here. However, we kind of quite often forget about that the fact that there are models of talent development outside the sport environment. And what I keep saying, and I publish on that once in a while, that talent identification is not happening at the moment of identifying a kid for a sport. Talent exists before that, exists from the birthday, and it is developed from the birthday, maybe even before, genetically. So we do have theoretical models of actual talent or excellence development, which are before sport or even outside the sport environment. And then, of course, I will show at least one to you because there are many. I don't want to concentrate more on basic theories. The next would be sports science models. There are at least 5, 6, 7 of them started being developed somewhere in the 70s. And then, of course, applied models, the ones which are closer to the heart of administrators. And those are also important. So in that sequence, we will move. And then, of course, I will spend some time sharing ideas and thoughts about practicalities. All right, let's have a look. Theories. That's what I said. You know, theories quite often are bright genius in the practical. It does happen that way. However, we have to go with theories because theoretical science or theories is something which actually opens up the horizon. Then when the horizon is open and then some brilliant thoughts are there, we can go, okay, I need to work in that direction and convert that theory into something sort of practical. All right, so what do we have here? We have talent development models, theoretical. Most popular are these 3, which I'm not going to cover all of them, but I would rather pay attention to Eriksson model. And that is the one which brings us to the very well-known point of, or term of, deliberate practice. And also eventually brings us to the point of 10,000 hours rule, which, thank you, Afzan, for introducing it. And I will also talk a bit about it. So what is it? Adopting the extreme environmental position to pose the theory of expertise, predominantly based on what was termed deliberate practice. So what about it? The number of hours of deliberate practice accumulated in a domain is a significant determinant of the level of expertise attained. Now, just reminding you, it is not sports necessarily based model or a theory. It's a theory of excellence or achieving excellence in whatever activity you deal with. Now, what's the next one? Researcher has found that experts invest more hours of practice per week compared to novices. Obviously, it works for sports too. And start engaging in deliberate practice at younger ages. And this is where this particular theory starts being kind of a bit questionable. Sorry, I'm not questioning the theory. I'm just talking practicality. All right? That is now true. Why and how? Like Azan was saying, yes, we do have early specialization sports and we have late specialization sports. But also please remember that we just don't have those for the reason that they kind of wanted that way. We used to say that, okay, people, we have a term which is known as optimum age of top performance, which is very different in gymnastics and rowing and marathon. So if we have statistically the age of Olympic champions, and then we count back from there and say, okay, people, even if you use 10 years or whatever the rule is, and if your rower is a world champion at 25, he can easily start kind of his practice in rowing at 15. Fine. But not because we want that, but because his optimum performance age is later than in gymnastics. In gymnastics these days, you can hardly get, particularly in female rhythmic gymnastics, you cannot get anyone in the world level kind of older than, I'm afraid, what, 20? Maybe even less than that. And again, count back 10. So that could be that. Not could be, but it's basically the major reason why they actually start early. And the next point, which I'm going to cover here, it was revealed that it is impossible for individuals with less accumulated practice at a given age to catch up with the best individuals who started deliberate practice earlier. And what is important also, the last one, and maintained optimal levels of practice that did not lead to their exhaustion or burnout. Obviously, added with the reason. Now, examples, or like bringing you back to early specialized and late specialized. If I'm a rower, although I was not a rower, I was a kayaker, and I'm of 23 years of age, having 7 years or 6 years behind my back of experience or training age, and then someone comes and starts at 15. Yes, he cannot compete with me, but not for long. In 5-6 years of time, he can beat me square. And that is a specificity of this sport. We did that, in fact, years ago in USSR. I was still an active athlete. We were kind of laughing every spring at the big girls sitting in single sculls, or big guys who were actually completely uncoordinated, whereas we were like, we are cadets with juniors, we can do this, we can do that. You know what? In about a year or two, these guys were laughing back at us because we were still potential juniors, and these big people were already national champions. Why? Because sport is such. You can actually get a shortcut. You cannot do that, however, in rhythmic gymnastics. So that is exactly why. If you have a kid who started at 7 and at 11, that kid is state champion and perhaps a national team member, then suddenly a parent brings another girl which is fabulously matching rhythmic gymnastics, and she is 10. Does she stand a chance? The answer is no. That's a case when the rule works. She cannot catch up with everyone else because of specificity of that particular sport. So one sport differs to another one, and the rule which works with one may not necessarily work with another one. And that brings us to the point of 10,000 hours rule. See, we are living in the world where marketing is important, where management is really very important. And we work at sometimes symbols, and we appreciate sometimes signs or slogans, which are logic, explainable, and 10,000 hours rule is kind of one of them. So what does it say? Known as Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 rules. That practice makes perfect, 10,000 hours of practice to be exact. And that actually brings you to excellence. Now, let's do some simple math and ask ourselves a question. What is it about? It says that it takes approximately 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to master a skill. Again, this is not necessarily about sport, just like very basic principle. So for instance, it would take 10 years of practicing 3 hours a day. Okay, how realistic is 3 hours a day? At elite level, yes. At sub-elite level, yes, if we try apply it to sport. Other than that, okay. To become a master in your subject, it would take approximately 5 years of full-time employment. So employment here is a key word. To become proficient in your field. Simply work out how many hours you have already achieved and calculate how far you need to go. And you should be aiming for 10,000 hours. Okay, that may work for a surgeon or a lawyer, a journalist, but it doesn't work that way for sports, and I will explain why. Now, the simple next question which actually appears, did anyone try cheating? Okay, yes, some people did. How? If you stick to 10,000 hours or 10,000 figure, it can be presented as how? 8 hours a day. Is there anything in the world you are doing for 8 hours a day? I would say you sleep for 8 hours and 24 hours, but you don't do anything else for that massive number of hours a day. 5 days a week, 44 years a year. There are 52 weeks in a year. I'm sure you remember that. So for 5.5 years, is it somehow applicable to any activity? Questionable, doubtful. 5.5 years, however, looks better than 10. Any other? Yeah, some other calculations. 8 hours, still not doable. Anything. 5 days, 52 weeks now. Now every week you're busy. No leaves, no nothing. Unrealistic. However, that can give you what? 4.8 hours, years to achieve that 10,000 hours. But again, I remind you, we are now playing with expertise which is perhaps non-sport related or not applicable. Now, I did try cheating too, in a way. It was not cheating though, but years ago, I started examining long-term development models and recommendations from various sports, experience from various coaches, and that's actually how it helped me to kind of systematize it and present as a, let's say, 10 years. It can be done in 6, I said. Rowing, we had that experience, which actually we repeated back about 20 years ago in India. We had a selection program known as height hunt. The minimum requirement was 6 feet height. Less than that, you are free to go. You know, like I was joking, it's like in a Disneyland, although I've never been there, but I do remember that criteria. There is 1 meter plank. If a kid walks not touching it, he goes in for free. But if he touches that 1 meter, then parents have to pay. So we did more or less the same thing, but we put it at level at 6 feet. If you are walking under, not touching, you can walk further back home. But if you are stuck, you stay with us. So out of those selected through this thing, then of course motor abilities test, some other things we did. Out of that batch, back in when was that? 95, 94. By 2000, we got Asian medalists, Asian championships. So it is actually doable. Okay, back to the table. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10. Sessions per week, hours per session, hours per week, training weeks per year. Simple arithmetics gets us the range of about 120 to 150 hours in year 1 when we are dealing with a novice. Improving, increasing. We will talk about it in a while when I show the bar chart and the graph. And eventually, we are reaching about 1,000 hours a year at the age of like sub-elite level. I specifically didn't put age here. I'll explain later. I'll give you examples why. So it's year 1. It's training age. It's not anything else. Training age 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 10. And then it goes above 1,000 hours a year of training. Definitely, it is not the same way for every sport. I'll give you just a few examples. Whenever we are talking about endurance, yes, there'll be that figure. The moment we are talking about games like football, hockey, volleyball, basketball, the figure, even at elite level, will still stick to about 1,000. If we are talking about power sports, even at elite level, the volumes will be roughly about under 900. For a simple reason, you don't spend more time there. You need the quality, not necessarily volume. So even at elite level, I would say something like 7 years onwards of training age, athletes will be sitting between 800 and 1,200 hours of training per year. However, of course, it's just quantity. Quality is a completely different story. Now, so we'll get back to that, of course, issue in a while. Now, how did evolution of sports science models occur? And what was the origin? Where did they go and how? Let's check this out. So at least we have 5 prominent sports scientists who actually worked out or suggested to the public and with serious, I would say, degree of success and international acceptance. These at least 5. Dietrich Harre from German Democratic Republic, non-existent anymore. Vladimir Platonov from Ukraine, 1984. Hardel Singh from India, 1991. Bompa, Tudor Bompa, 1994. Although I'm sure that he perhaps had a decent model before actually this publication, because of course he was publishing before that, but that was English publication. The previous ones were most probably in Romanian language. And eventually Istvan Belli, the person who can now be considered as a leader of like long-term athlete development programs, models. So let me discuss with you and share how these 5 prominent people actually fared in developing long-term athlete development programs. 1971, Dietrich Harre published the science of, not the science of training, but I would say the study of training. It was like years ago, and if you know that GDR was realistically one of the most successful countries in sports. So he suggested a basic or foundation training with 2 subphases. And the most important part of his kind of model was that he was actually giving the age range. Surprisingly, that age range disappears in some models, particularly for different groups of sports. So surprisingly or not, the very first model was very practical. So he was just saying or mentioning that, okay, in technical sports, phase 1 is 5, starting perhaps even 5 to 7, 9 years of age. The phase 2 10 to about 15 in power sports, a bit older, 9 to 12, and phase 2 13 to 18 in endurance sports, phase 1 11 to 13, and the phase 2 14 to 18. So he was actually the first to put it in black and white that, hey, look, people, we cannot follow the same age range for every sport. They're all different. Oleksandr was starting today with early specialized and late specialized. So obviously, we have technical sports that he was mentioning, artistic gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics. We now call it more like artistic sports, but in his terms, it was technical. And then followed by the advanced training. So we can say, all right, phases 1, 2, 3, 2 subphases in basic, and another one in advanced, which was technical 15 to 18 and 20. power sports 18 to 2023, and endurance a bit older than that. Obviously, showing that yes, age differ, specialization differ, and obviously this model also had a development into quantifying the kind of each stage. Platonov, Vladimir Platonov, Ukraine. I'm happy to say that he was and still is my mentor, and I was doing my PhD not under his direct guidance, but under some. So he was suggesting years ago, and that's still more or less the model East Europeans are following. However, he developed it a bit further, adding one or two sub-phases, which I didn't put in this particular presentation because the structure actually remains the same. So initial training, about a year or two, preliminary training, 2 to 3 years with having overall development in mind, more like multilateral development, as Hassan was mentioning today, followed by specialized training, a duration of 3 to 4 years to master highly specialized skills and obtain specific fitness of the selected sport, followed by maximum realization of individual potential. That's what in jargon we typically quite often call sub-elites. A maximum realization, 4 to 5 years of training to reach peak fitness and performance level, whereby, again, as mentioned today at the beginning by Zan, like maturation issues. Although we still have to kind of run and manage our junior athletes in senior competitions, but we also should understand that humanly possible and ideal is to try maximum of loads and maximum performance when your body is fully ready for that. And then eventually the fifth one was mentioned as maintenance of acquired performance. So it's more like a longevity in sport, like how long you can actually stay there at the top. And of course, as you know, there will be like examples from a one season champions to 4 Olympics, 20 years at top. So it's like mind-boggling how actually athletes can survive that long at the top elite performance level. Then, of course, we have to praise and thank sports science and coaching science and the sports medicine and other contributing factors, which actually help athletes to maintain that longevity. And obviously, a certain degree of contribution would be with multilateral training. I'm sure about that. The next one, Hardayal Singh. I also kind of happy to say that I know him. We worked together in India quite for many years as a highly professional training methodology expert. He developed his model, his variation. Hardayal was actually East Germany trained, so obviously that most probably was one of the influencing factors. So he actually advanced the model a bit further, like making it a combination like of basic training, advanced training, and high performance. So also given years range, and also sticking to the German specificity, which is very highly appreciated, like technical sports, power sports, endurance, combat, and team games, which actually works. Although it was suggested in 1991, he published in the book of Science of Sports Training back there in India. That is a quite realistic model, of course, provided it is kind of supported with some quantifications, which definitely it is. Tudor Bompa, the author and the scientist and the coach in the past, who actually took Canada, and then North Americans are not exactly following Bompa's theory, but more or less in agreement with that. Some are not, of course. There is one, of course, point in that original book of his where, for whatever reason, he missed the block of mesocycles in the annual planning, which I cannot explain for myself anyway, and many people couldn't too. So in Bompa's 1994 edition of Periodization theory and methodology of training. He kind of divided it into generalized phase and specialized, splitting again each one of those into two, giving initiation as the first one, aging it 6 to 10, foundation marking as 11 to 14, specialization 15 to 18, and high performance at 19 onwards. But again, see, for whatever reason, when you give age, we need to again get back to that idea of different sport, different beginning, different advancement, and different age of top performance. And I don't want to say it now. I will again do it later in the next module. We cannot actually practicality without specifying which sport we are talking about. So eventually, Eastern Valley came up with the advanced model of long-term athlete development. By far, as I say, he is now the most practically used author or creator of a long-term development model. And it's quite popular in Malaysia. I know it's quite popular in India. And Canada, of course, many sports are adapting that particular model to their specific issues. However, see, if you pay attention, or even starting with the numbers, so it's kind of 7 stages. So one is actually pre-sport, active start, and another is actually post-sport, which is like after the retirement. So we are looking at 5 stages, and I can't help but wonder that most probably it also perhaps at some point was influenced by Platonov's model, with 5 stages of initial sport here, basic training here, specialized training here, and then maximum realization of individual abilities, and eventually maintenance or sustainability of acquired performance. I'm not saying it is that way. However, to me, as a specialist and someone who is dealing with those models quite for like 30 over years, some resemblance I can see. However, of course, to the credit of the author, he presented those models in a nice, easy, explainable manner, not overloaded with some specific terms like Ukrainians and Russians are actually bad at it. I was too, of course, when I was still in the stage of mastering English proficiency and so on and so forth. We were taught to write massively, kind of fundamentally, and the problem is you cannot sometimes understand what we are talking about. And particularly translating, trust me, I've been translating many issues of many papers from Russian or Ukrainian. No, not yet from Ukrainian. From Russian to English is a headache because the thoughts are expressed in a very generalistic manner. No specificity, long sentences, and so on and so forth. Okay, back to the model. It was actually a great, I would say, presentation. Fundamentals, meaning fun. Learning to train, training to train, training to compete, training to win. Yes, it is catchy, and as what I was saying in the beginning, yes, we now live in the age of images, presentations, and it actually caught the attention of the public. I have to give it, and it's a good one. However, we still are facing an issue of age. Now, if you look at active start, which is pre-sport, I will completely agree it is 1 to 6 years, but why? Because schooling starts at about 6 or 7. And schooling itself is a talent development as well. And I keep saying we keep kids in school like in a pond, to which coaches are coming at different age of those kids to take some of them or best of them into sport-specific training. So that is why when the model again keeps 6 to 9 as fundamentals for boys, and 9 to 12 for girls. So I would say, I'm sorry, rowers, canoers, kayakers, boxers, wrestlers, shooters, quite often archers, are not fitting into that. Coaches are not looking for, coaches from these sports are not searching for kids, talented kids at that early age. If I'm again a rowing coach, I will come to pick my athlete here, starting at 12. If I'm a boxer, I will also come here. So then what happens with fundamental training? I cannot pick a boxer at the age of 6. It is not fair. And it is not sane. Yes, I can pick a gymnast, I can pick an acrobat, I can pick a swimmer. And I cannot pick a rower, I cannot pick a kayaker, I cannot pick a canoer. It will be ridiculously early. And that will exactly lead to what Afzan was saying at the beginning. Burnout. You come early, you leave early. So that is one of the drawbacks of that particular model, that the cap of age, which is put on everyone, doesn't fit all. The system, however, is a good one, and it is keep developing. And I was surprised that a while ago that okay, there are some other models. Now that was, I think, from Irish Sport Authority. Fundamental, learn to train, train to compete, train to win, retirement. So if we again chop off the retirement, we still have 5 stages which are consistent with the ones presented on Belly original model. So I'm sure this is one of those developed after the original one. But I have to admit that I have been surprised even more than that when actually I figured out that that original Belly's model is not the last one. Now it is 9 stages. I am not saying that it is good or bad. I am not saying that original version is always better than the extension. May not be true. However, let's have a look what he is presenting it now as. So this is the original model of 7 stages. Again, sport minus, sport plus. So it will be saying like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 realistically. Again, we can chop from here active start also out and active for life also out. So it will leave us now with 7. So what's the difference? Now, fundamental stays, learning to train stays, training to train stays, learning to compete is something new. All right. It was also mentioned today, again, thank you, Afzan, at the introduction. Long-term athlete development is not only about training, it is also about competing. Very much about competing, giving exposures, giving sparring, giving kind of friendlies, fighting or competing with weaker opposition, competing with stronger opposition. It's a whole science of planning of competition calendars. It's very, very less covered in sports science. I'm doing that in my master's course for our master students in USM. Although they look at me and saying, why are you telling us this? I said, people, if you are going to be sports scientists, there is a chance that you might well be talking to administrators. If administrators didn't get that information at some point, you please share it with them. Yeah, you cannot fix the Olympics. You cannot fix the World Championship, but you can and should fix every other competition which leads to the picking. And of course, you have to pick selection competition if it is not international, like World Cup or Hockey World Cup. But then you have control competitions, you have model competitions. That is in your hand. That is to be picked by you. So learning to compete perhaps is one contribution to that. Training to compete. Now, learning to win. It's another one, sort of a new one. I will share with you what was the idea behind that. However, it goes up and up. And then winning for a living appears here. And that, as far as I understand, the model is completely about professional sport. About people who live actually being a professional. There's not a very wide category of our athletes, elite athletes, but there are, and the more the merrier, because those are the people which, again, as was mentioned today, yeah, if you have a bench of 5, 6, 7, 10 athletes, yeah, you can play them and actually expose them at different competitions. I still remember I was doing some prognosis while in India about the Olympics where women weightlifting was introduced, and there were quotas, and I was like sitting days and nights trying to figure out if China and every other country given 5 berths out of 8 weight categories, how to gamble, how to figure out which category they will opt for and which category will be left blank. And remember, if the weight category is blank of China, you have a chance of getting a medal. Because if China is there, it's a gold. Why? When the first time I opened years ago the rankings, the world rankings in female weightlifting, 5 first positions Chinese athletes, each weight category. And you know what? Not the same. 5 different names. 5 different names. Each one participating in one major tournament. One in the World Championship, one in the Asian Championship, one in the World Army, one in the Students' Games. Everyone different. Same weight. Kidding? So, if the bench is there, yeah, good. The bench is not there, not good. So, one athlete cannot cover all. All right. Time is running fast. I'm not planning to spend much time here, but I will just show it to you, and you can have a look at the lecture note, the talk note, if you wish to. Now, 9 stages. Objectives, age. Again, age is tricky. Age is like realistically not very practical, honestly speaking. If you're talking age for like sports for all, yes, but if you're talking about specialized, okay. So from active start to fundamentals, begin teaching ability, balance, coordination. It's a good theory. It is linked to growth and development. It is fabulously linked, but that but will come into picture in 5 to 6 slides from now. So fundamentals 2, 9 to 12, 8 to 11, continue to enhance ABCs. If you're talking about 12 years of age or 11 in females, and again, go back to rhythmic gymnastics, they're national champions by that age in Malaysia. Then they are already highly specialized. We go further down or up, training to train, 12 to 16, and females in 11 to 15. These kids are international already, and we are building the engine. Building the engine is already done. So I'm not trying to criticize. That'll be silly, because this is actually the world accepted kind of model. I'm just trying to kind of draw your attention to the practicality issue. Okay, training to compete, optimize event-specific preparation. At the age of 18, I have a question, practicality-wise. To continue with integration of physical, mental, cognitive, and emotional development, yeah, you cannot stop it. Conduct event-specific testing and monitoring. Man, it is done from the age of 12, usually. So, it's a model which is really good, but it has actually, I would say, like one limitation only. It actually targets the hitting the absolute best performance at that optimum age for that performance, which is correct, which is true. Like say, okay, winning for a living, 23 plus. Holistically, philosophically, sociologically, it is correct. It avoids burnout. It avoids premature overload. Overload is a good word, by the way. Don't confuse it with the word training. Then it also says, okay, we will create that machine, huge universal soldier by the age of 23, bang, to win the Olympic champion, the Olympic Games, which is basically correct. But there are a few things exist which we have to think about. And one of those is practicality. And that is when I say, I'm sorry, guys, let's get back to earth and to the realities of life. Why? For a simple reason. We do not have like only the necessity of perform at the Olympics. Kids start performing at the age of 12 in many sports, not in early specialization ones only. Yes, when we were talking about Bompa's time and Bompa's periodization 1994, I sometimes have a feeling that the latest models are still looking at Bompa. I agree. He is, in a way, a father of periodization. Many fathers are there too as well, but from Eastern Europe who never actually published in English, unfortunately. However, look, we now have such a huge competition schedules that anyone could not possibly believe 20 years ago. Now, we have Youth Olympics, for instance. All right, world's youngest athletes age from 14 to 18. Olympics, and not only in gymnastics. There are all the sports actually represented there. So what to do with these kids? Now, we also have like other competitions that, as I say, gymnastics will be there at about 15, rowers about 17. Those are people who already have like at least 5 to 6 years of training age. And Olympics are not only the ones. We have international children games. We have ASEAN school games, like 13 to 18 years of age. The children games is 12 to 15. International competitions. Naturally, we are not talking about peaking or the best ever performance, but we are seriously talking about what? Best for this particular age, or best for this particular stage of growth and development. So how to deal with that? And where are these people coming from? Are those the ones who will be the world champions in 10 years' time? The answer is no. The answer is no. Because we still have quick, fast maturers, we have like early maturers, we have late maturers. We have people who are maturing at different age, at different training age. Now, I will ask the same question I keep asking for my master students or colleagues of mine. I'm sorry. If I was of the same height of 6 feet exactly at the age of 14, talking about myself, 14, yes, of course I was slimmer and roughly about what, 15 to 20 kilos lighter than I am now. But then I realistically had an advantage. Now, was it fair to wait and not to expose me to junior or cadet competition and say, no hurry, you wait, you will go there at the European Championship. Are you kidding me? By then, I lose the advantage which I have now. And everyone is of the same height. So then the question will come, so why didn't you utilize your kind of biological advantage back then? Because you were waiting for the advantage, because you were waiting for the optimum age? Before that happened, I went into studies, into sports science, and I basically did my PhD before. So I was lost actually to sport. However, luckily I was not lost to kind of junior sport. Fine, enough of personality issue. Now, age group competitions. Now, I put here India on purpose. You won't believe how many medals India is actually getting in age group swimming competitions. Dozens. Ask me a question. How many they get in senior, in Asian championships, in Asian games? Kosong. Nothing. Zero. From 50 medals, 60 medals in age group swimming. Where do these medals go? And again, if you don't have that, you wait for maturation and everything, you will not have this either. So then the simple question comes, how do we move from one phase to another? Are we waiting for something? Are we going somewhere? Are we hitting the kind of peak of whatever? How does it look? How do we actually convert those good-looking theories into practice? Okay, now that's what I did again years ago. I was showing that left part of the table before. That's actually how it looks in graphical form. And as I said, 2011, I still was doing that, 2014. And then one simple question started kind of, back thoughts kind of moving somewhere at the back of my mind. Are we realistically improving kind of linearly? Like, okay, from 120 to 350 to 350, 500, and so on. So, is it really so? And of course, it will be split into phases, basic training, specific training, like, okay, percentage of this and that. Will that be the right approach? I will answer that question in a few slides from now. Now, we have to revisit another kind of position. If we are, and you are involved into age group competitions, in school games, in international competitions for kids, and in Youth Olympics, I know for a fact that in the first Youth Olympics, Malaysian gymnast in rhythmic gymnastic, Lee Van Nin, I think she finished 4th, and it was a tragedy in a way. It was just like one whisker from a medal. Now, when do we actually start moving kids from home-based training to residential academies? We cannot possibly train an international athlete like in uncentralized training. That is why you do have the Jalil Sports School, Bandar Penawar, I hope it is still there. You still have the Kelantan. Oh, sorry, Kelantan. I'm in Kelantan. Kuantan. A sports school, a sports academy. When or how do you actually pick those kids to those academies? And when? It's actually happening right about here. After about 2-3 years of coaching, then they actually get into the taste of it, they stay with us, and then it happens like roughly about here, year 3 or something. Now, and here we start facing the challenges. Okay, now we are reaching the point about challenges. Now, challenge number 1. Who should be selected to the residential sports academies? Now, practicality issues. Coaches, scientists, administrators, I hope you are there. Now, I will give you one typical thing, and it happens, unfortunately, for years together in half of the world. What is it and how is it happening? How those kids are selected? Typical approach. Now, medal winners of the regional state level competitions. Now, okay, you take a medal winner. It looks kind of logic, but is that the best choice? Now, check it out. Concern. Are they best? Are they really a best bet in the long-term run? Or possibly they are just best trained for a moment? Can you answer that question? I'm sorry, the answer most probably will be yes. And I'm sorry to say that the winning kids at early age are not necessarily the best potential. Now, you have to make a choice, whether you pick a performance or you pick a potential. Okay, performance is obvious. It is right here in front of you. Number 1. Number 2, your top administrators will say, hey, you cannot refuse a medal winner a berth in the sports academy. The parents can actually sue you. They say, hey, our kid is a winner, you are not taking that kid in. Instead, you are taking someone else who you call a potential. How do you do that? Good question. So, solution has to be non-typical. If you don't have 2 in 1, I would say pick potential over performance. But then what happens? A conflict. Administrators will say, how? I just gave you a reason. I'm a parent. My kid is a state champion. He has to be there in the academy. Wherever a coach says, sorry, he is good now or she is good now, in 3 years' time, he will be nowhere close. Who would believe that? Then scientists have to step in and say, okay, people, we know how to do that. How? One of the things which I was introducing in one of the academies I'm consulting, it's a kind of multifactorial talent assessment. Yes, competition performance is there, but not only that, it has to be performance potential. And that's a point where you have to sit with the coaches and say, people, you know how to see the talent, please share. Black and white on the paper. If you don't do that, you will always pick a medal winner, even without a potential. So if you want to defend your own talent pool, do it and kind of get it protected. All right? Physical attributes, skills proficiency, psychological attributes. Yes, there are technical issues which are developed, properly introduced, they work. But the most difficult part, again, for a coach or a scientist is to convince an administrator that not only the performer has to be here. Even if performance is almost zero, okay, it's 1 to 10 scale, for instance. It is here, 0, but the potential is here. I will pick the potential and I will fight with the administrator, hopefully in a decent manner. Issue number 2, best performance quite often are early specialized, and not in the sense like Afzan was starting with, because it's gymnastics or because it is acrobatics. No, it is fencing, okay? But it's early specialized, meaning that 3 years that kid was only doing, say, 80% of workouts fencing related, no physical conditioning, no nothing. And that is quite often the reason why that kid is winning at this particular age. Not because he is of the best potential. So what happens? Typical approach, early specialization, bring quick medals. Who wants quick medals? This is not a secret. Everyone does. Parents, administrators, coaches, athletes too. So where is that someone who say, hey, people, there is no hurry. You just hold on. There's a big conflict going on. You know about it. So concern, where is time for basic training? Where is time for strength and conditioning? Where is injury prevention? So you have again a choice, either quick success or remote. I know for sure instances where coaches, in order to get their contracts extended or renewed or get a better pay, they are pushing kids into early specialization in non-early specialized sports. And they come again, you know the reason. So, solution, back to basics, age group picking. This is one of the keywords which I'm going to make over it like in about a few slides from now. Remember it, age group picking, okay, later. So, conflict, administrators may not be happy. I'm also partially administrator. And the people usually who are getting into like sponsorship or funding, they say, okay, how many medals did you get this year? I say, okay, 50. How many are giving next? Are you kidding me? No, you have to give some improvement, like 75. I say, what if not? No, it has to be. So how and where is that motivation not to? Which brings us to another concern or another issue. What? Younger athletes are typically overexposed to training as compared to mid-age and senior athletes. How does it happen? Everyone who is in sports academy or sports school, you have to follow a timetable. Bang, morning 6 to 8:30, and then evening, for instance. Okay, time is not necessarily that correct. Like 4:30 to 9:30. Okay, 2.5 hours morning, and another kind of almost 3 hours in the evening, kind of 5 per day. Now tell me, of course, if you have only one group of advanced athletes, that is good. But in most of the schools or most of the academies, you will have cadets, you'll have sub-juniors, you have juniors, you have seniors. Everyone is out for training in these particular hours. Now, what is the concern? Same training hours for everyone? Is that good? No. Now, and the choice. Basically, coaches quite often don't have one, although they of course do, but they actually opt for keeping everyone in training for these very hours. So then, what is happening? You are overexposing youngsters. The kids who are actually, if you go back to this one, who are supposed to have like very limited hours here, like, okay, they have to have about like 200 hours a year as per their age. You are exposing youngsters to write about 500 straight away because they are in the academy. What does it mean? That you are disturbing load and effect principle. All right? So you are kind of overdosing the youngsters and you are underloading the seniors. And what is more important, that you are basically leaving no option or no window to improve for senior athletes. When you kind of violate the dose response thing, you're overdosing youngsters, and they are exposed to 5 hours a day from year 2 up to year 10. So if you are doing the same thing for 7 years, how is it on earth you're expecting any improvement in 5 years' time? The volume of training is the same. You can only play with the intensity, with rest intervals, it is not good enough. Now, then, if that is happening, all right, that was my timer. All right, so I'm still there. Now, so what happens? Weekly training volumes now sit at about 25 hours for each age group, roughly about here. It's completely wrong, but it does happen. So what happens? This is what you are overloading the youngsters, and this is when you are underloading the seniors. They have to go kind of higher than that. So when they're just hanging in the middle. So eventually what happens? Cadets are rapidly progressing, winning medals, and then they slow down. Juniors are still kind of winning, but already struggling, and seniors are in trouble because they don't have, the ceiling is already achieved. So that is why the simple idea is you either start early or you start with the same time with every age group in the morning, but then you leave youngsters alone, spend an hour with them, let them go. Cadets, 1.5 hours, let them go. Then you are only left with seniors for 2.5 hours. At least they are benefiting from that attitude and that attention you are paying to them in the last 1.5 hours of training. And then adjust. No one does it. It is inconvenient. It's a headache. But if you don't, then your juniors will keep winning. Your sub-juniors will keep winning. Juniors will be struggling. Seniors will be like, we have nowhere to go. No extra kick. Okay. The last one issue which I'm going to share with you today, but the most complicated one, a transition. All right. See, in many countries, school games particularly, they introduce different age categories, like under 14, under 17, under 19, under 21, and then it goes seniors. So that is an international practice. We cannot stop it. It is a system which works. Now, never ever, except for a few models of general excellence development, like Bloom's one, there is a point and attention paid to transition from one phase to another. What is the transition? How is it done? Unfortunately, not a single model of sports science for talent development doesn't cover that. But it is a huge issue practicality-wise, and it does deserve a theory. Now, I'm not saying I'm offering you a theory, but let me share a few things with you. Now, typical approach is everyone wants smooth transition from under 14 to under 17 age group. See, different sports, different grouping. However, age is fixed. For instance, you have SGFI, that is School Games Federation of India. They have those age groups. Malaysia a bit different. Some other countries bit variations, but still it exists. Now, is everyone safe or equally safe in this transition? And what are the choices? Now, I'll give you the examples of the most cruel situation. I cannot, of course, cover all the sports, but I will just pay more attention on combat. Why so? Next slide. So, how to perform in the senior age group, being the youngest in it? See, the simple thing. If you are 14, all right, you are champion in your age group, and you are the best and the oldest in this age group this year. When next year you are out of under 14 into under 17, what happens to you? You become the youngest, the least experienced, and quite often, what? The smallest? I will show you why. So, that is why, in particular in combat, the situation is actually very tough. And solution which I'm offering here may sound a bit ridiculous, and when I first actually voiced it out, in front of the coaches and administrators. They say, Alex, are you kidding? I say, I'm not kidding. You may need to avoid competing at some points in your long-term career. Why? Next slide. The conflict, the funniest one. Everyone is unhappy. And you know how it is. Coaches are unhappy. Usually they are kind of indecisive. Like, are you serious? Yes, I am. Administrators, are you telling us that we will not get those medals again? No. If you have a champion in under 14, how on earth you expect him to be a champion next year when he is under 17 and at the age of 15, he is 2 years younger to the seniors in that same age group? You want him to fight those people? Now, coming to the point. Okay, examples. Country-wise, see, for instance, that's the Indian example from that academy I'm with as a consultant. Under 14, under 17, under 19. Every sport, huge competition. Now, and the problem is actually sitting here. Now, check it out. Boxing and judo. Under 14 boys, 28 to 30, 30 to 32. The small ones, the light ones. And you know what the problem is? Those ones are typically selected a lot because they're quick, they're agile, they are coordinated, unlike the tall ones, the big ones who are clumsy, who are slow, who are kind of uncoordinated, and coaches like, are you come on kidding? That kid doesn't know anything. The smaller ones, ooh, he runs fast, he is agile, he does this, dum, dum, dum. Now, check out what happens when they hit under 17. Those blocks do not exist anymore. The minimum weight a kid should hit at under 17 in boxing in India is 46 kilos. Can you tell me what happens to all of these? Now, the only way for them to perform is what? To hit that weight. Seriously. Like, imagine if the kid is 34, a champion, national champion in under 14 at the category of 34 kilos. What is the chance, ask yourself a question, of this kid hitting plus 12 kilos next year? Particularly if he is just like 120 centimeters tall. Everyone will tell you, are you crazy? You talk to nutritionists, they say, no, we cannot do it because he doesn't have a frame. His development is such that he is skinny. We cannot do that. Now, coaches will say, hey, then we want that kid to perform. Then I will say, all right, I can suggest only one thing, like 3-way improvement. 1, good practices. Please squeeze everything you can from the dietitian. Anything on earth, if she or he can offer, okay, 2 kilograms, okay, fine, good practice. Now, if that is all which can be achieved with good practice, then I will step with bad practices as a scientist or as an advisor or as a consultant, saying, fine, we are going into fatty food, we are going into overeating, we are going in every possible bad habit to put on another 6 kilos. How much will that be? 8. Where to get another 4? Then I say, coaches, I just close my eyes. You do whatever you feel like doing before weighing. But the question is, why doing all that nonsense? And again, see, the same thing is happening in judo, minus 25. 40, you're kidding, 10 kilos different. You go internationally. Okay, boxing at Summer Youth Olympics, minimum is 52. If it is you are in 40 something or in 46, you still have to add 6 kilos. So that is why, and now it's American wrestling. Now, under 8, 43, under 10, 49, under 12, 58 minimum. Below that, you will not be actually permitted to perform. Your fielding is gone. Now, under 14, 71, 88, you see the gap? 17 kilos. 17. The ones who are lighter than that, they are in huge trouble. That is why I keep saying, people, then do not compete. When you are moving from under 14 to under 17, first year, just forget competing, and maybe even for the 2 years time. Why? If you feel that that particular athlete is a potential, the only way for you to save him or her is not to expose him or her to the competition in that particular age group for a while. That is why I'm kind of introducing that idea and saying, hey, it's supposed to be age group picking. Why? See, if you are enrolling a kid into the academy and you say, all right, at the age of like 11, enrollment, critical year, adjustments, everything. Only year 3, under 14, meaning when the kid hits 14 years of age, that should be a competition picking year. And when you move to under 17 age group, you please, and especially if you are behind in weight categories, in growth and development, like late mature, that can be the year free of competitions, even the second year. That brings you to the second age group picking at the age of 17. And then at 19, as sub-elite, again, this is a red color. I explain now what the red color is. Red color is a critical year where you're not supposed to deliver. As a coach, as an athlete, as a scientist, you are not supposed to. And administrators should be convinced that this is something worth talking about. Critical years of kind of converting from one age group to another. So picking one at the age of 14, picking two at the age of 17, sub-elite under 19, and then only under 21. And then if you are still there, you can reach elite level. It means that nothing is linear. Remember, I was showing you the graph. Okay, it's a nice theory. Every theory is nice. Every theory shows that it is linear. It's not. Plain and simple. And the objectives of training are also not linear. And they are completely different. Why? Let's have a look. Because, see, objectives of training cannot be the same in the critical year and in the year of performance. No, cannot be. Now, let's have a look. And that will be the remaining part of the presentation. I hope you are still there. I hope you are still not asleep. I am trying my best to actually finish it within about 10 minutes. Now, adjustment to school and academy. Skills and basic physics. Remember, those kids are already having 2 to 3 years experience. All right. Previously, at least 1 to 2. That's what the point is. If they have been started training at the age of 10, so by 12 or 13, they'll be recruited to that academy, for example, or sports school. So, observing growth and development. Of course, that's where physiology is coming into picture. We are coming now to sports scientists, where to actually get it. So, natural development, growth and development has to be there. First productive year. These are kind of year by year. Specific skill based on regular strength and conditioning. We're getting back to issue number 1. Most kids who are competition winners at early age, they are not sufficiently trained in strength and conditioning. We have to build up for the performance in the current age group. So you have to actually get back, because you know that the ones who are competition winners at the age of 12, 13, they quite often are early specialized. Coaches are actually capitalizing on that to get more medals. No offense. We are all humans. We are all living in the same world. And we, as coaches, I'm also a coach, we are basically pushed quite often by administrators. No offense, admin. We are often pushed by parents who want the kid to be a medal winner, actually to get a sports quota and so on and so forth. So no offense, we are all professionals, but strength and conditioning is an issue. Now, prehab, what is it? I'm sure you've heard about that particular trend. Physiotherapists are moving from rehabilitation to what they call prehabilitation, rather prophylactics, prevention. And that is actually a critical thing. And also another critical thing at this particular age group is good eating practices. So you have to have a nutritionist there, and you have to have like a very proper balance between macro and micronutrients in food, so that kids are properly developed, because remember, we are exposing them to training loads, and we don't want those training loads to hamper with natural development. And then first peaking comes at about 14 years of age. You don't need, realistically, I'm serious, you don't need to expose them to official competitions up to the age of 14. Please arrange sparrings, friendly and other stuff. Okay, state level competitions, but it has to be something which brings them to peaking in under 14. That's where your first champions are actually appearing. What happens next? That was, as what I was saying, the most critical part of the transition, 14 to 17. Realistically, the most critical. Now, what happens? Psychologically, these people are demoted to the most, from the most seniors in the under 14 to the junior most in under 17. So they are becoming actually the bullied sometimes ones, the ones who are the smallest, and they have to survive through that. So psychological issues are there a lot, and they have to be tackled by psychologists, group, individual, whatever. They need to adjust to the heavier weight categories, and that is where nutritionists are there. There is where the issue of weight categories, particularly the light ones, is into picture, and that is, you need to reduce a competition exposure. Leave them alone. Don't do that. Just give them a year completely free. Pay attention to these other things: putting on weight, stabilizing the weight category, adjusting to the strength and conditioning demands. Remember, you put on weight, the kid is becoming less conditioned. Although, of course, you will say, the heavier the kid is, the more is absolute strength. Yes, that is correct. But it's only absolute strength. Relative strength goes down. Everything goes down. If you put on weight, you have to spend much more time in strength and conditioning. Is it happening? No, it is not. Replace competition with more sparrings, more exposures, and just start thinking about second peaking. Bring on, build up psychological toughness. Don't compete them in year one. This is where physiology is there. And that if it is like about 15 years of age, 16 years of age, 17, prepare them for the second peaking. Keep them alive, keep them active, improve on motor learning, improve on skills, improve on strength and conditioning. No hurry. Give them time to breathe. Give them time to adjust. When they reach the next phase, which is under 19, your time limit is even less. You only have 2 years now. 17, performed, best at the age group, then boom, down again. 18 and 19, but only one conversion year. So what happens? A lot more for both general and specific conditioning. The taller they are, the heavier they are, more strength and conditioning they need. So please remember, the progression has to be there. And if the time is the same span that I was explaining in issue number 1 or 2, if I'm not mistaken, you cannot hang at the same time available as volume of training. Kids have to have less, juniors more, seniors more. That is where you can still improve timings and the kind of both quality and quantity of strength and conditioning. If you don't do that, if you do again only specific training, nothing will happen. And importantly, all right, both general and specific. So it has to be both specific and general conditioning. All right. Competition exposure, stick to domestic. Again, don't show them much internationally. They are actually in a tough situation. They're reaching about 90% of individual genetically determined potential. They are climbing. That's why we call them like sub-elite. Stabilizing weight categories, joining national camps as an objective. And then, of course, anthropometry, nutrition, sports science, psychology, everything. The older, the more important. Again, between under 29 and under 20 and over 23, again, only 1 year available for readjustments and transition. Stabilization of age category, a lot more specific conditioning. That's where not general but specific. In psychology as well. All right. International exposure with a lot of competitions. Full nutritional and supplement support. Supplementation, protein powders, anything which is permitted, because they are what? They're reaching about 95% of individual genetically determined potential. Stabilize weight-wise, psychology-wise. Basic conditioning goes bit less on the counts. Specific improvements, overseas training, and exposure. They are reaching the optimum age for top performance. That is where it is like about 23, over 21, and reaching full potential. All right. So that is where maximum realization of individual abilities, what we call it back there in Europe, Ukraine, Russia as well. So specific improvements. And then the idea is maintaining the elite status and performance. But again, remember, not every year, nothing linear. 14, down. 17, another peaking, relax. 19, another peaking. So look at it from practicality point of view. Every theory is good if it is practical. Now, what is the issue here? So how do we protect them from overexposure? Number one, you have to explain and convince administrators, and you have to introduce the immunity rule. That's what I did in that academy. Red colored years are non-performing. That's it. If the kid is not performing, it is actually meant to be that way. We protect, we give him or her an immunity. They are not supposed to perform at 15. They may not at 16. They are to deliver at 17. They again are not supposed to perform at 18. They may get an immunity to hit 19 peaking, and then to hit 21 years peaking, and so on and so forth. If we don't do that, if we keep pushing and pushing and pushing, we will have them overburned and leaving, quitting early. We don't want that to happen. Eventually, the last part of the journey for today, advanced apply models, admin models, philosophies. I was, of course, thinking of giving you that at the beginning, but then I thought if I start with that, by the time I reach specific models, you'll be kind of tired and bored. I'm sorry, administrators, the last part I kept at the end intentionally. Different models, hockey, American hockey, like, all right, they say development philosophy. See, philosophy is something which is even bigger than long-term development program. It's actually a philosophy which is foundational, like principles, strong focus on individual skills, learning environment, provide the skills. So it's actually a bigger building which people like Afzan and administrators of higher level are actually constructing for us as scientists, sorry, not the right people to begin with, athletes, coaches, scientists, and administrators will feel kind of happy and work productively and deliver what they have to. So if that philosophy is constructed, which I'm sure ISN and MSN are doing a good job, then we will feel safe kind of in it and can work productively. Example of baseball development pathway, stages of LTAD, American, and you know how they are about baseball. So it's a kind of bigger look. Again, like more like a philosophy. Activate, discover, progress, develop, and they talk competencies, the fundamentals, individuals, training, open, like it was again said in the beginning by Zan. It's individualized, but also kind of group-wise as well. Apply and inspire, and an age group. So this is something kind of a bigger picture. And we need to realistically, you know, identify ourselves at whatever stage or wherever we are, to actually be capable of delivering specifically, professionally, up to timetables, hours of training, sequence of loads, rest intervals, every single thing. Then we get into medals as we always want. Another example here, an attempt by an author which is cited here to actually put different layers of the model all together, like psychosocial development, individual development, athletic development, and eventually academic, occupational development, and age. So, like, for instance, we have the landmarks here of like 10, 15, 20, and then you see here like childhood, puberty, adolescence, young adulthood, athletic development, initiation development, perfection, discontinuation, 30 something. But there are people who are winning European championships at 40, Linford Christie, and a good friend of mine, Leonid Taranenko, won European championships at the age of 42, if I'm not mistaken, in weightlifting. There are still kind of people delivering even at that age. So that is about it, and that was they were the issues I wanted to share with you. I'm really grateful for your attention, and I hope you are still there, because for the last 1.5 hours I can only hear myself. I hope you are still there. Thank you so much. So this is the end of it. I guess, Afzan, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Olex. That's the most longest webinar that I ever had. Wow. But the most valuable sharing that I really hope that the our local coaches, our coaches at the grassroots level may benefit from the sharing session. Okay, is there any Q&A session, Azwa? Maybe can appear, might be Dr. Olex can answer whatever question that...
Sure, and sorry to keep you all active for that one.
All right, okay. All right, there is a question from Leo Telajan. How do I become an expert 10,000 hours? So, Dr. Olex, I leave for you to answer this question.
All right. See, the one part which actually makes that 10,000 hours rule a bit scary is that when we read about it, or when I was kind of presenting slides, it looks like, okay, we have to count for 10 years or something. It's not that bad. Let's say we are talking expertise as of, okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm a young student of sports science and I got my degree. So I would say that right from getting employed or getting a job, say a sports scientist, roughly you can say that, okay, when you spend 10,000 hours, or roughly 10 years, or, okay, let's not be that pessimistic. I showed you the options of 7 and 6 years as well. So when you spend that much of time, let's say professionally on the job, in about 6, 7, 8 years, you are realistically becoming an expert, because you have to practice what you have been taught, whether you're a coach or you are a scientist or you are a doctor. So after graduation and getting the diploma or a degree, that your count starts professional improvement or advancement. And then you can say, all right, in about, like, again, 6+ years, you are an expert in your own field. I mean, if I answer that question quickly, that would be the answer.
Yeah. Okay. Just on my view, when we talk about 10,000 hours journey, there is a numerous knowledge view mentioning about, at least in order for you to have in a proper way of athletes to represent, starting from the fundamental until the elites, might takes at least 8 years. Is that this is applied for the 10,000 rules too? I mean 10,000 hours.
Not really.
Not
That
really.
what was, yeah, that was one of the slides in my presentation when actually I did the calculations. Even if you stick to a 10-year career, like training age from 1 to 10, roughly it will take about, I would say, realistically 6,500 to 7,500. So like 6,500 is something which is reasonable. So 10,000 rule doesn't work for sport, as I keep saying.
All right. So it certainly describes that we really need to structure our long-term athletes development. Am I right, Olex?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So we have one more question. From Ame Arifuddin. Is this long-term athletes development can also be applied to the athletes who start at quite late age, for example, like 20 to 23 years old? So any feedback on that?
All right, Amir, thank you for the question. Okay, we look at it from a bit different perspective.
Yeah.
See, for instance, I'll give you a few examples. Okay, you take AJ, like Anthony Joshua, the previous heavyweight boxing champion. He started boxing at the age of, if I'm not mistaken, 16.
Okay.
We do have people who start at some point, which is like nearing 20. However, please remember one point. These people were not inactive the previous life. For instance, they were or possibly could be involved or engaged in something else. See, many elite athletes did not start in the sport which they completed their excellence. Usain Bolt used to be a cricketer before becoming a runner. Before becoming a 100-meter sprinter, he was 200-meter sprinter. Lee Na, before becoming a tennis player, was a badminton player. And there are hundreds of examples. So what the correct answer will be that, for instance, the one of the funniest one. Of course, it is the winter sports, which Malaysia is not experiencing much, like bobsled. Like it's actually pushing a cart down the hill and then jumping into it and following the gravity thing in the corridor.
Yeah. All right.
Now, many people who were novices in a bobsled were elite sprinters before that.
Yeah.
Why? Because the main issue in the bobsled is to push the bob in such a manner that it actually reaches the highest possible velocity before they jump in. Who can do that better than ex-sprinter? So then you can say, yes, the fellow started his career as a bobsledder at 21, but he actually started his career in athletics at 12 or 15, and he was a 100-meter runner up to 20 or something, but then not being the prominent or having no potential for development in athletics, he swapped into actually bobsled. And in fact, when UK was preparing for London Olympics 2012, and Abzan, you know that for sure because that was a part of your activities then. Remember, they were actually introducing different programs of reprofiling athletes from non-potential into potential, which could be medal winning.
Yes.
So, but that is another part of the answer. However, Arif, if that 20 years fellow was not at all active in sports, I'm afraid that model won't work.
Okay. All right. That's answer Ame Arifuddin question. Okay, there is one last question from me. You know, Alex, this year, supposedly mid of July, we are going to have the SUKMA 2020 at Johor. Due to the COVID-19, all the multi-event sports has been postponed. So how actually the you think on the realistic calculation on the long-term athletes development actually may can affect the preparation of the athletes itself?
Oh, this is of course the unfortunate event, and the problem is that it actually disturbs a lot. And see, however, I was looking through different situations, COVID related in some countries. And in some countries, there was an interesting development and even logic. They said, okay, Olympics are postponed, meaning our best athletes, they'll have one extra year to get into the picture. So it's kind of a matter of positivity, but it won't hurt much. However, of course, there will be issues related to schooling, to universities, to exam sessions that unfortunately will be there. But hopefully with that current developments online and like what you're doing that great job of organizing such gatherings online. So I'm sure Ministry of Higher Education will consider like exams online or like what we are doing now. All exams are converted into assignments, so you don't need to be physically there. So hopefully, they'll manage.
All right. Okay. So thank you, Olex. I hope from our sharing can give a proper view to the audience, to the viewers, local and global. So to conclude this session, perhaps today's session on the long-term athletes development can guide all coaches at local or international, globally, to prepare our athletes in the right pathway. And I have two quotes from Vern Gambetta, athletics development. They're mentioning about speed is a skill. Therefore, the skill of sprint can be taught if in proper progression and principle of the motor learning approach. And another one, he mentioning about as training age advances, that paradigm has to shift and the overload has to come from intensity. So that's all from us. Thank you very much, Olex, having a good presenter for today's program. I really hope that we might see each other again online webinar later on. And thank you for all viewers, local and globally, for watching us at AKK. Don't forget to like our page. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.